The season 5 of the Humans and AI podcast is here. We're going to be chatting with incredible founders and leaders across the neocloud, AI infrastructure and platform space with a sharper focus on today. We're going to be learning about their businesses, the roles they're in, the challenges they face, what's actually working and what's not. This is current, unfiltered insight from the people building AI. I really can't wait for you to hear it. Hey Michael, welcome to the Humans and AI podcast. Great to have you. How are you doing?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Nick. Good to be there.
Fantastic. Well, look, you and I have been talking about this for quite some time now. I think we were, when you're over in London at Christmas, we were chatting about it. So great to finally have you on. For the benefit of viewers and listeners, do you mind just a bit of an introduction about you and 1KE, and we'll take it from there?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Michael Chanter. I'm the CEO and co-founder of 1KE. I'll quickly introduce sort of 1K in high level. What we do is we help technical sales teams close about 40% more of their pipeline. We can get a bit more into that later, but we really help in the deep solutioning element, and we use agentic AI in that process to achieve that. So that's sort of what I'm doing at the moment, and obviously, got a bit more history behind that.
That's probably the most succinct introduction to a business I've heard on the podcast so far. So that's absolutely perfect. So you got the pitch down. It would be great just to sort of step back into some of your experience quickly, high level background as to who you are, because I think actually, as we talked about before offline, a lot of your experience really lends itself to why you're doing what you're doing today. Obviously, as somebody that's been a senior leader within the industry for a number of years now. We won't go into too many details of how many years, but yeah, if you could run through it.
Yeah, sure. No, you're kind to just say a number of decades. So my background has been working in the technology space, in the system integration, resell, managed services sort of space for about now, more than 25 years. And over the last sort of, say, 5-10 years, I've spent most of that time as CEO of various organizations that have been in that space. So what would traditionally be called the technology channel. So, working with enterprises and mid-market customers to deploy technology, whether that be cloud, networking, infrastructure, all those types of things. So running those businesses, and sort of most notably over the last couple of years, I was global COO for Logicalis, which is a $2 billion business globally in 26 countries. So spent a lot of my time in that space, helping customers, everyone from sort of mid-market to government to banks, deploy enterprise infrastructure. So that's sort of been my background. If I go back into the midst of time, and probably it'll be germane to this conversation, I was, an electrical engineer who turned into a software developer. So I spent a bit of my early career software developer and, working in finance, building applications and that type of thing.
Probably explains why you still don't mind tinkering with it now. That's the thing. Whereas I could just about turn the laptop on and off. So that's fine. So no, it's good to chat about. Obviously, so you've worked. In fact, we have the same background. So obviously AI is relatively new. My background was cloud managed services and service integrators. So the entities Logicalis, sort of recruiting for those. Strangely, somehow, we didn't cross paths until recent years, really, because we work for the same companies, and obviously have a huge amount of connections. So when I remember connecting with you firstly on LinkedIn, it was like 150 odd mutual connections, and just somehow we didn't cross paths. But that's by the by. So obviously you've been in that industry. You've ran sales teams, commercial bid teams, pre-sales, all those kind of things. So I suppose that's obviously given you the food for thought and the inspiration for obviously what are you doing now? AI has been around a little while, but we've seen since the sort of ChatGPT in 2022 I think it was, it's taken on a whole different sort of understanding and value prop to commercial businesses and to just people like us at home, right? And obviously you're capitalizing on that, but also, doing something very different that provides a lot more intuitive value. Do you able to just talk a little bit more about what 1K is doing at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So maybe a little bit of context is you and I have spent some time sort of working in Europe over the last couple of years. And in that
Yeah.
context, I had the opportunity and privilege to sort of really deeply, I guess, immerse myself in the AI space reasonably early. So, I was seeing things probably before it was as publicly visible as it is now. And that formative sort of opportunity, because it gave me the insight that this was really going to be sort of world changing. And so my early intuition was AI is going to change everything. It's going to be material across all industries. The fact that it's essentially a cognitive capability as opposed to what we've seen in the past was unique insofar as that it would impact and enable things that we couldn't do before, because we'd never had, we'd never, for example, seen white collar jobs being able to be, replicated or enhanced in this way, right? So it was just a moment where I realized that, oh, this is really interesting. There's a big opportunity. And at my heart, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started and sold a couple of businesses in the past. And whilst I worked many, many years in large organizations, that entrepreneurial sort of crystals sort of exist there, and I can't seem to dispel it. So this was just, I just couldn't resist it. So that was the sort of genesis of, okay, what am I going to do? And I had been working in Europe, as you know, came back to Australia, wasn't really sure what the opportunity was going to be, and sort of had a vague notion of building something in the data and AI space, and that was sort of it. So I had some good people that I wanted to work with, and I was approached for a similar role to those I've had before, and corporate CEO type, in a system integrator. And I said, no, I'm going to do my own thing. And the people who approached me actually just wrote a check. They knew me and said, oh, well, and to be honest with you, my business plan in retrospect wasn't all that great, but they say VC and PE backs the person, not the business plan. So I guess that was another data point, right? Bottom line is, what are we doing now, and where we started is quite different. What we're doing now is I have taken that vertical expertise that I've sort of come to, or deep understanding of that vertical problem in the system integrator space, and realize that AI is uniquely positioned to solve a problem. And what the problem is this: when you're selling in that space, CRM allows you to track events and collaborate on things, but it doesn't solve the problem. So what I mean by that is, when you're talking to customers, they have all this complex, information about their existing environment and what they want to do and where they're going, and they're not really sure what the vendors offer out in the space and what the latest tech is, and the salespeople are having these conversations, and all of these things are happening, but ultimately it all comes back down to a sales engineer or a pre-sales person. And that person's job is to synthesize everything that is going on in the deal and come up with a solution, which is sometimes, a 100-page document just to make a sale. And that fundamentally is a very highly cognitive problem, if you think about it. Like, it's taking domain knowledge across all sorts of different domains, synthesizing, all the signals from the customer and coming up with the right answer. And we realized that this was an opportunity for us to really take, some of my vertical knowledge and the opportunity that AI offers, and then wrap that in a deeply verticalized workflow that fits into the the day-to-day of these businesses. And that's what we're doing. So essentially our thesis is, if you could solve the solutioning problem, which is really tricky, in an hour instead of 2 weeks, then you're going to close a lot more business. And it seems to be resonating really strongly with people we're talking to. We say, look, imagine if you could do 10 times the amount of sales and you could come back to the customer in an hour instead of 2 weeks. You know, that sort of thesis seems to be resonating really strongly.
So it's important to add here that this is about removing the bottlenecks and increasing effectiveness and efficiency. It's not about removing the need for a pre-sales engineer or, cutting down the workforce and saving costs that way. That's not what this is. That's not the sort of premise, is it?
No, absolutely not. So, and I think it's a really good thing to just address head on, Nick, because clearly there's a lot of, I guess, fear and loathing around AI in terms of these types of things. And my perspective is blue sky. I'm in the sales. I'm in the front end of the business, right, with this. What actually happens in real life is there's 10 sellers and one pre-sales guy. And that guy's getting absolutely, taken from pillar to post, working all the hours, writing documents, has to attend all these meetings, be in calls, and also maintain all the context across all those deals all the time, and essentially it's just all you're really doing is saying, look, imagine if we could magnify that guy by 1,000 times. And that's actually where 1KE came from. Was the idea was, imagine if you had 1,000 experts or 1,000 engineers, right? So that's where 1KE came from.
So that's where it came from, yeah.
Yeah. And the idea is that they can cover 10 times the depth and 10 times the breadth, right, across 10 times as many opportunities. So you're sort of getting a massive multiplier, because even the greatest pre-sales guy only knows, might know 5 domains, but won't know 10, right? So you can sort of extend their knowledge capability, but you can also extend the amount of work that they can get done, and you can do it in a way that is incredibly responsive to your customer, which anyone who's in sales, and I guess everyone who's a founder is in sales, and you would know this yourself, that time kills deals, and pipeline velocity is just critical, right? So if you've got an opportunity and you can be the first person to come back with a really credible answer, then you're going to be the first person to engage with the customer, and off you go, right? And that's a real world benefit.
So it's maintaining that speed to the deal, maintaining quality, really sort of driving that. And I guess, obviously this is come from your experience, within the service integrator space, but obviously this is just sales essentially. So this can be replicated across any industry. This is just about driving sales. Doesn't matter whether it's a large enterprise, but technically a smaller business could actually have that and be valuable. I suppose, the larger enterprise businesses have all this information, all this data on their systems that obviously it just mops up and, spits out something, very, very quickly, and in the tone, and in the formality of what, a Logicalis or an Asobi might do, as an example. But I suppose, obviously that's the user case, isn't it, sales at the moment? But I suppose in theory, this could be replicated across different functions within an organisation in time.
It could. And, we've sort of thought about this. In fact, I heard a session today where someone was talking about how they use a similar sort of concept to just summarize everything that happened in the day so they can remember, because they just can't keep up with everything, right? And look, just the sort of, I guess the wrapper is, we have this concept of ingesting signals, right? So signals come from emails and CRMs and from Teams meetings or meetings like this. So it joins all the meetings, it listens to all the transcripts, all those things. Ingesting all of that and then building a canonical sort of view of what's going on, right? So, because if you think about also in a deal, there may be many people involved. So it can be in all of those, right? One guy can't be in every room, but our agent can be, right? So you're right. It could be extended. What we're thinking though is rather than that is actually we're starting in the tech sector, but if you think about it, there are many technical sales, right? So there are technical sales going on in oil and gas and in medical equipment and in, you name it, like agriculture, biomed, whatever. So conceptually, I think our idea is that we are looking at how do we help the sellers and the sales engineers in those industries to address more opportunity better and faster. And that's sort of our and at the moment, that's sort of what we're thinking. We will stay the front end of the business. We might extend across verticals, start in the vertical we know well. It's a $3 trillion vertical. It's keep us busy for a little while. And then after that, we'll see. But that conceptually, we think 1 KE could be 1,000 experts. It doesn't really matter what the domain is. It's about bringing more scale to any domain.
Well, yeah, sales makes sense, and like I say, yeah, across different verticals, absolutely. I mean, I suppose just getting into the crux of it. I mean, what is actually? Why should they be going with a 1KE solution rather than adopting a more mainstream, model, for example? So, yeah, just curious to know, obviously, what would be the smart choice in going with you guys?
A good question. So
I've only got good ones.
So we sort of have three common, I guess, questions like that. The first one is, this is a CRM, or is this just a CRM, or is this a proposal writing tool, right? And there's sort of my answer to that is CRM is about collaboration and really sort of documenting events. It's not really about understanding the problem and solving the problem. That's the core of what we do, right? We understand the actual problem the customer has, and we can then create a solution which is specifically answers that problem. So in some cases, that might be a 100-page technical document with all of the architectures, how everything fits together, how it's grounded to the requirements of the customer, all the architectural diagrams, everything. So that is not a CRM, obviously, and it's also not a proposal writing tool. Proposal writing tools take fragments of information and reuse them. We do that anyway. That's sort of, to us, is sort of table stakes stuff, like, your T's and C's and your branding and everything. It's obviously going to come out, looking like an Asobi proposal. It understands, that. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, and this is really important, is it understands the capability of our customers. So in our space, you might be someone who resells AWS and implements it, but you don't manage it. Or you might be someone who does AWS and Azure, but you don't actually manage either of them, right? Or you could have a mix of, so your business model and your technology expertise is used. We have this concept of the institutional profile, so we understand really deeply the customer, and we've got, a database of like 5,000 different products with SKUs. We're at that level of understanding what can you do, and what's your rate card, and what's your services, and how do they work. And our model understands that and says, okay, so therefore, this is the Asobi solution for this customer. So it's entirely grounded in your business. So that's sort of the second thing. And then the third thing we get is, but we're already playing with ChatGPT, and we use it to do blah, 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 writing or whatever. And my answer to that is, well, that's fine. Of course, if you weren't, I'd sort of be wondering if you're really a candidate for us, because you're like so far away from what's going on, you're probably in deep trouble. But so I think if you're not using ChatGPT, I'd be questioning, or whatever, whichever your model of choice, I'd be questioning what you're doing. You should be doing that. However, there's no scalability in that really, because instead of having a guy writing documents, yes, you save some document writing time maybe, but now he's copy pasting transcripts, and he's trying to manage documents, and he's trying to keep context in the model. And what our tooling is doing is building memory about you, building memory about every deal, having the full canonical set of requirements, and then wrapping that all together in a way that's totally scalable, and it's ambient as well. So it just sits on your shoulder while you do your job. You don't have to be going in and out of an interface trying to make this work. So I'm a software guy, ultimately. And I started with a lot of optimism about this, how easy this was, and it's taken us 18 months to get to this point. So AI is great for helping you build things, but it's still, it's hard to make it work really, really reliably. And that's sort of what we've got to now. So
we're still talking, when I speak to companies at the moment, is how much are they actually relying on AI? How much are they trusting AI just yet? I think, when I look at all the different businesses, it could be public sector, it could be large enterprise, it could be small startups. How much are they actually relying on their own hard grunt work, quite frankly, and just working the way we were a few years ago? Yes, they're prepared to give it really simple menial tasks, write a LinkedIn post, do their shopping list, write them a diet plan, these kind of things that don't necessarily have much serious weight to them. So how are we sort of doing true adoption and actually putting trust into the AI to actually allow the businesses to scale?
So I think it's easy working in this space, Nick, to forget where most of the world is, right? And even at a cultural level, it's quite different between different countries. For example, I read the other day, interestingly, that in the US there's a huge distrust of AI. Like, it's particularly low trust, right? So whereas I think in Australia we're one of the highest adopters, and that's typically Australian because we tend to adopt new technology and embrace it really quickly. So you would have, and the point I'm getting at is that you can't expect enterprises to have adopted anything if most of the people in the workforce are not really, they don't really deeply understand it. They understand it as sort of, like you said, a prosaic level, write me a diet plan or whatever. And that's cool. Or help me write, polish up my resume or whatever sort of text-based thing. But do they really understand things like how do you build an agentic cloud with a model where you've got an agent that's collaborating with other agents to build things and is grounded in truth, and where your prompts are all context aware and generated in real time, and all they're sort of complex problems, right? I mean, some of these problems that really enable this at an enterprise level, realistically, even on the edge, some of these are only really just starting to get solved. So it's sort of understandable that people are not ready yet. And I'm sure you've heard many times, the biggest challenge is always organizational, right? How are you going to get everyone to embrace it? However, what I am seeing is, honestly, that we're getting into a two-state market where there's enterprises that are either native or massively culturally aggressively embracing AI, and there's the others. And the speed, it's genuinely a two-speed sort of environment. And on the one side, you're seeing people moving and evolving almost week to week. I mean, the things that we're achieving week to week, frankly, is sort of shocking to me. Like, we're achieving so much from one week to the next that when we have a Friday meeting, when we get together, sometimes I can't believe, like, we'll set a goal on Monday and we'll have achieved the next Friday's goal. So,
and you just can't do that without embracing technology, without embracing AI.
you can't. And I don't. I mean, I'm not nihilistic about it. I don't think that AI is not a replace or a threat in a macro sense. It is, however, and I think it's fair to be clear here, is that if you're not on board, you're like, you know what I mean? Like, I think one of the big business leaders in Australia, one of our big banks, the Commonwealth Bank, I think the CEO, Matt Coman, did a presentation a couple of months ago where he was talking about AI at a lunch, and he said, "You're either at the table or on the menu." I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. I like that. I might use that on the next one.
Yeah, but I don't. That's not a threat, really. I sort of think you need to just say, "I'm too old to be a founder, Nick." Right? Mm-hmm. So I've got lots of experience, but I'm too old to be a founder. But the reason I am is because I've never lost my curiosity and desire to learn, and I think that's just the key to it. If you're really curious and you've got a huge desire to learn, it's all optimism. If you don't, it's sort of tricky, right? And I think but the reality is that two-speed race is happening now, in my opinion, and I can see it.
Well, we talked about. I mean, look, it's changing the landscape. It's not breaking the landscape, and I think that's essentially it. And obviously, people are a little bit worried, but it just means that, yes, okay, there will be some jobs that disappear, but it's going to create new jobs, right? And I think that that's what AI is essentially doing. It is changing, and there's more opportunities. And I think if you look at what's going on, you talked about Jensen and the 5 layers, and obviously you guys are focusing very much at the application layer, and it is all to aid businesses. So, yes, we need the infrastructure, we need the compute, but the apps are that is what businesses are really focusing on, because that's what's giving them the results, that's what's giving them, the growth in their business. And if it facilitates business growth, then there's going to be opportunities for everyone. And I think what's interesting is, I talk to a lot of people about, AI, and people are understanding what AI roles are out there now, and it's creating new jobs that maybe aren't necessarily technical, but you could be talking about context architects, prompt engineers. They didn't exist a couple of years ago, right? And you don't have to be a great coder or developer to become somebody that provides a really intrinsic value into the wonderful, crazy world of AI and how technology can embrace business.
Well, if you look at some of the recent claims, like that we'll have the first $1 billion business, which is a one-man business, right? A CEO. Yeah. Now, what is that like? So that the implication there is that, and honestly, today I was at an event in Sydney which had 1,000 founders at it, right? The thing that was interesting was that the demographic wasn't 1,000 coders. Most of the founders, I would say, are less technical than me. So, yeah. And whilst I used to be a coder, I would say I hadn't had my hands on the tools for 18 years, Nick. So now I'm back, in that space, but I'm not writing lines of code. I'm using AI to help me do it, right? It's writing the code for me. Now, so my point is, I'm too old to be a founder and too old to be a coder, right? I just am. However, if I can do it, anyone can, right? The thing you should take out of this is that you should have no fear. All you need to do is be curious, embrace this, think about what you know and where your vertical knowledge is. And the opportunity is just immense. Like, you are more enabled now than ever to do your thing, to learn new things, to create value. Is so easy to do. Honestly, it is so easy to do. So I've never felt more empowered and never needed so little capital to do so much. And I think that's the differential, right? Obviously, if you're building data centers with lots of GPUs in it, that's a different story, because at that layer, it's all about capital.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
and that's a big job, and someone has to do it. It's not me, but someone has to do it. But yeah. So back to your point, I think people who have deep expertise and knowledge, experienced people, bring your vertical knowledge to AI, and you can deliver huge value, right? So that's the older demographic or the mid-career demographic, right?
You and me, basically.
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
it.
But then look at the younger demographic and say, okay, so for you guys, you can achieve things that in days and weeks that was impossible when I was 20. It just couldn't be done. So, your opportunity, and really, as long as you're curious, so if you're doing something that is inherently white collar, mundane, repetitive work, right, then, and your early stage career, which there are, of course, there always have been, because that's always been the entry level job, right?
Yeah, of course.
Then those types of jobs, I think you need to be the guy that's decided, I'm the one who's going to work out how to stitch this all together and use AI to make it flow. And you'll get 10 times as much done, and you'll be the person who's developing deep knowledge about how AI works, and then off you go, right? But I don't think it's the domain of technologists, just to be clear. I think marketing roles, content production, you name it, like just so much. I mean, today I saw presentations from people who were doctors who would use AI to build things, to you name it. So, yeah, I think it's unique. It's a unique opportunity to build value with very little capital. And that's sort of the way I would think about it, and just be deeply curious and try everything and do as much as possible and embrace it all, right? Because if an old dog like me can do it, anyone can.
It's quite interesting you say that, because to be the CEO or the founder of a technology business, you don't necessarily have to work for a technology business before. You don't necessarily have to have been an engineer before. This is about the vertical industry knowledge and how AI can solve a problem that you've probably experienced and felt the pain of, and so you take that experience and bring it into a business, which is great.
100%.
And I think, and then obviously, like you say, you've got the younger generation that probably have taken an interest in technology, that can actually already see firsthand quickly how they can build a solution, how they can build a product. It probably is going to be, we are going to see more startups, more entrepreneurs, within the AI tech space, more than ever than previous innovations.
100 times, I would say, Nick. 100 times.
You talked about being curious and stuff like that. I mean, but you still got to build a business. You still got to be commercially astute and be able to form a company and know what to do. Before we sort of wrap up, I mean, you've also talked about the fact that you've sold businesses before and built, and you've worked in the commercial world. So all that experience lend itself to today. What sort of guidance would you give, some of those founders? You met 1,000 founders today. Probably a lot of them have very limited experience compared to yourself. But for people listening, what sort of guidance would you give the engineer or the industry specialist in building a company?
Okay, so 3 things. The number one, make sure you identify what the pain is you're solving, right? Like, be crystal clear. When you said, that's the shortest intro at the start, because I know what the pain is that I'm solving. I'm just closing more of your pipeline. That's it. End of story, right? I'm like, how I do that, it's clever and it's hard to do, and good luck, have a go if you want, but I reckon it's hard, right? But that's what we do, right? So the pain and the identified pain for us is in that technical sales, process. The bottleneck is solutioning capacity, and we solve that. So therefore, you can just get back to the customer. So I'm not repitching here. The point is, you need to really understand what is the pain you're solving, right? Number one. And obviously in AI, typically that's going to be some cognitive challenge, right? Because that's the unique sort of chemistry it brings. So that's the first thing. The second thing is validate early and often with real customers, right? Because what you think the pain is, right? And I don't know if you've heard of the concept of is it a lolly or is it a painkiller? Like you might think it's pain, but it might just be a lolly. Like you say to the customer, "Oh, look, we solved this." They go, "Oh, that's nice." But unless it's really painful, they just don't care. So you have to really validate, is this really a pain? Does this have real value to a customer? So do that early and often. That's the second thing. Yeah. So, and the reason I say that is no matter how experienced you are, in fact, if you are more experienced, you might come with some cognitive bias saying, I know this, But when you find, at the end of the day, no one's going to buy anything unless it hurts, right? So that's the second thing, right? And then the last thing is this. You made a point around just now about I've got business experience and knowledge and so on. And that's true. And, I've, throughout my career, learned many things that I didn't understand when I was mid-career. I was in a CEO and I became a CEO. I learned about lots of things. I learned about sales. I learned about finance. I learned about, mergers and acquisitions. I learned about company valuations. But in the last 5 years, I've learned an immense amount about venture capital, private equity, about how you put businesses together, about building a startup team in this world as opposed to the startup teams I've done 20 years ago or whatever. So what I'm saying is there is an infinite number of things that I still had to learn about building this business. And you know how I did it? I used AI, Nick. All of it. Everything. Everything. There is nothing. In fact, every day I think to myself, why did I just sit and try and work this all out the hard way? I build a thesis, I do a bit of research, I validate it with AI, and then I riff and riff and riff until I get what I need. And 9 times out of 10, that's what I need. And that, to the point now where, many things that I would have thought were specialist capabilities that I needed to bring into the business, we don't do that. We'll occasionally consult externally, and I even have external advisors who give me, advice and guidance, along the way, and you should always do that. But I guess my point is, for the young startup people, whatever you don't know is a prompt away. You can teach yourself anything. I genuinely believe that. I really believe that, to the point now where you and I have, have children similar ages. When we say children, we mean young adult people. I'm not giving advice here, but I would argue, what is the real value in formal tertiary education now? Because I'm getting to the point now where, depending on what you're doing, of course, you don't want to learn how to become a surgeon using ChatGPT, but in many cases, a lot of things that you want to learn or need to know, the traditional ways of going about doing that, I just don't think they're effective, or they're not as effective. So just an observation.
I think you're right. I mean, I think, obviously on a slight segue, I mean, AI, it is a tool for everyone to use, and it's just how much you embrace it, it's how much it's going to help you move things forward. Whether that's you being a CEO, founder, or let's say somebody looking at their education, right? It's definitely a conversation going in our house about university and apprenticeships and what have you. But look, just to summarise then, probably, as I said, the exact most succinct pitch to what a business does, I'm yet to hear. I hear about AI factories and all these kind of things. Probably half the people that listen don't know what an AI factory is. You guys essentially help fix the bottleneck in a sales pipeline. So essentially, if you're a business leader, in the commercial team, in the finance team, or even a pre-sales engineer that's drowning and actually thinks this would help them, they should probably speak to 1K and Michael Chanter. Does that sound fair?
Absolutely. We'd love to hear from you.
So I think that makes sense. I mean, it's really fascinating to actually just learn more about, and obviously you've built a business based on experience and based on sharing that common pain. I think AI is going to constantly evolve. We're all going to be on that sort of bandwagon at different sort of stages in the journey, but you're right at the forefront of it, embracing it. So I'm really keen to see how this continues to grow. You and I have been talking about this for a little while. So the fact that we've finally sat down and recorded, probably one of my most enjoyable podcasts. Not that I haven't liked the others, but I've really enjoyed this one. Let's see how this gets done. I'm going to be speaking to people, letting them know they need to be listening to it, because I think there's a lot of people just in my network alone that could actually really benefit from learning about your experience setting up a business, but also what the problems and the gaps in the market you're trying to fix. So for now, until next time, we'll get you on in a year. We'll take it from there. All right.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nick. It's really been fun and a real privilege, and great to reconnect.
Good stuff. Right. When you're in London, we'll have another beer and a line bike. I'll catch you soon.
100%.
And that's it for this week's episode of Humans in AI. A huge thanks to my guests for sharing their insights, and to you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to hit follow, share it with someone in your network, and let me know what you think. There's plenty more coming this season as we dive deeper into the people, the companies, and the ideas shaping AI right now. See you next time. The season 5 of the Humans AI podcast is here. We're going to be chatting with incredible founders and leaders across the neocloud, AI infrastructure and platform space, with a sharper focus on today. We're going to be learning about their businesses, the roles they're in, the challenges they face, what's actually working and what's not. This is current, unfiltered insight from the people building AI. I really can't wait for you to hear it.